Thank you, Carolyn and Matt, for both being here. I've done this 2 years now since I started teaching full time at Carlson. I've really, appreciated all the resources University of Minnesota has for students, whether it's career exploration, talking about networking. And one of the things that I continually wish we did a better job at, both institutionally as well as just civically, is supporting everyone's understanding of building better financial acumen. It gives us so much flexibility and freedom in our lives to be proactive, to do what we want. And one of the things I just wish there was more conversation about it. So I'm appreciative we have Matt and Carolyn here. We actually started a finance club a few years ago now, where we check in on a regular basis with each other and just continue to learn and talk about these different topics. Um, so this is really meant to be for all the students here, your chance to ask questions. I know a few of you had different topics you wanted to come and discuss. But this is really meant to be just an informal conversation. So with that, I figure we use our time today focused on first just getting to know who's in the room, sharing a little bit of context of what we're interested in. There's a little bit of information I'll go over, but then the rest of the time, and really if you have any questions throughout, feel free to type in the chat bar. We have a small enough group that you can just simply, unmute, ask your question. We'll have a discussion. Good stuff. Any questions before we jump in? If there's no questions, Matt and Carolyn, if we could just start with a little bit of introductions of both of you, if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about your career path, what you're doing today and how you got there. Who would like to go first? Carolyn.
Sure, I can kick us off. Hi, everyone. Carolyn Vanous. My career has been in strategic sourcing, procurement, kind of manufacturing operations. I spent a little over 11 years with 3M. So I graduated out of the undergrad program at Carlson with a major in marketing and supply chain. Joined the sourcing organization at 3M and then had a lot of really cool jobs over the 11 years that I was there. Spent a couple years living in Singapore, working with our Southeast Asia sourcing organization. Spent a couple years at a manufacturing plant, leading the sourcing for the plant and a couple other locations around the world. Got to work on the N95 ramp up during COVID when N95 masks were just in crazy demand, and we had to increase capacity by about 700% in 11 months. So really cool experiences there, but then kind of wanted to pivot. And in 2022, I quit 3M and joined a Series A startup that sells basically consumer goods e-commerce company. So I'm full-time remote from Minnesota. I lead our sourcing, product engineering, and operations team. It's called Forum Brands. And so that's been really fun. Went from a company of 90,000 people to 60. So just got to wear like a lot more hats over the past 3 years. Let's see, outside of that, I do a little bit of consulting on the side. So I have an LLC where I do consulting, just mostly in like the sourcing and procurement space. That's me. Oop, Matt, you're on mute.
Awesome. Yeah, so nice to meet everyone. My name's Matt. I live out in Nashville, Tennessee. Let's see, my career started in Minneapolis. My first job out of college was at Target. I did a lot of inventory management. I was a business analyst was the job title there. And I actually worked on the Target.com side, so that was pretty cool to be somewhat early in that space. And that's actually where I met Matt. Let's see. So I did about a year and a half, 2 years at Target, and then I worked at Amazon. So I moved out to Seattle. Worked at Amazon for 8 years. The first 4 years at Amazon, I did largely the same things I did at Target. So I did inventory management. I would say they had a little bit more automated systems. So a lot of it was more just kind of like setting up the systems and working with the vendors. So I specifically supported video games, and within video games I supported Xbox, which, as Matt knows, I'm a big gamer, and it was a bit of a dream job. Got to launch Xbox One and Halo 5 on Amazon. And then I did something completely different, and I took a 3 month leave of absence and took basically a coding boot camp. And then ever since then, I guess it's probably been the last 6 or 7 years now, I've been working in the data engineering space. So writing code, helping companies organize data, lots of change in this world. I think it's going to get even crazier with AI. So, yeah, now I work at a company called Flock Safety, which is a public safety technology company. Um, help them organize their data, and help I support the operations side of the business. So, um, let's see. I got 4 kids, so that's my other job. But yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing. Since we do have a small group, for our students that are on the call, if we don't mind just quickly going around the horn and just briefly introducing ourselves, our year, our major, and if there's anything specifically that you want to call out that you're interested in discussing or interested about that brought you to the call, feel free to add that as well. Who would like to share first?
I can start. My name is Matt. I'm a freshman this year. Well, almost a sophomore, but I'm a finance major. And in terms of what I'm looking for in here, I don't know a whole lot about um, personal finance. I think I do like a fairly good job of managing, my finances, as simple as they are. But you don't know what you don't know. So I was just came here to learn something new and see if I could take some away from it.
Hi everyone, my name is Peter. I'm also just finishing up my freshman year here. I plan on majoring in MIS and potentially finance as well. And one thing regarding personal finance that I would like to learn is how to spend money and not, I guess, save all of it to a point where um, you're not enjoying your time.
Hi guys, my name is Gabriel. I'm also a freshman at the U. I will be majoring in marketing and finance, and I was hoping to learn more about proper investments in the stock market, for example.
I'm Ryland. I'm a freshman studying finance and accounting, and I'm kind of just here to learn a little more about personal finance and kind of always open to learning.
Hi everyone, my name is Marielas and I also am a freshman. I would like to major in finance and accounting and I'm just interested in knowing different ways that we can just um earn money and save money, like different ways to do it.
My name is Tenzin, and I'm a junior currently and majoring in MIS and business analytics. And it's been a while since I took a financial workshop, so I am just interested in how it will work out.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm a marketing and entrepreneurship major. I'm currently a junior, and I'm just here to just learn more about personal finance in general.
Excellent. Thank you all for sharing. We're so efficient in going around the horn. If you do have questions throughout any of this, feel free, like I said, to speak up, throw it in the chat bar. Happy to jump through. But in terms of what we're going to talk about today, the first couple of things is really just trying to get an understanding of where we spend money, how we're tracking what we're making, what we're saving. We can talk about investing. And that really basic understanding of kind of inflow, outflow, especially if we're taking on for me, I remember when I was in undergrad, I was taking on student loans. So trying to figure out how long is this going to take to pay off? How do I prioritize paying down student loans versus saving for the future? What does that look like? And really just kind of building that plan of action and then really holding ourselves accountable. So how are we making sure to check in with ourselves and see, are we making meaningful progress on our goals? So that's kind of what we're going through today. This is something that I really do talk about with friends and family. And one of the biggest reasons I mentioned at the end of class But it kills me that 2/3 of the US does not know how much they spent last month in terms of not only knowing what you necessarily spent it on, whether we're talking about root, uh, food, transportation, housing, what categories, but just even at a high level, knowing where we're spending our money. And so the first couple things to figure out are really important, really trying to track where we're spending money. And Matt and Carolyn, if you have any, thoughts or anything you want to add to these topics, please feel free to jump in. This is kind of just like the couple things I want to talk through. And I know we spend a lot of time when we catch up every couple months talking about these topics. So the biggest thing, that I would encourage talking about is making sure that we have some mechanism. I do this on Excel today. There are so many different tools out there that you can be budgeting and really tracking how you're spending your money, where we're making money, and then really noticing the difference over time, whether we're saving money on a monthly basis, whether we're spending more money, so we can start to forecast out into the future and figure out, whether I have long-term saving, investment goals, or even just if I know I'm in a period while you're in school, you might be spending more money than you're making. It helps you set that expectation for the future so you know where you might come in as you're graduating. And appreciate Matt, yeah, naming IU all in the Big Ten. Love it. So just jumping ahead, this is an exercise I went through with actually my sister to really map out where is she spending money. And once you've done that, you can start to figure out what are those essential expenses like housing, food. We can talk about the fact we all need to eat, but maybe I don't need to go out to eat for every meal. And so trying to understand kind of where do I have flexibility within that versus what might be considered, more luxury expenses. Once we've done that, we can start to figure out, do we have outstanding, whether it's credit cards, student loans, car payments, mortgages, any other commitments that we owe money. Ideally, we'd even know if there's a corresponding interest rate. And so we can start to prioritize those highest interest rate loans and pay those back first. So same thing, for an example, this is a old sheet that I went through and prioritizing with someone, figuring out kind of what are their outstanding bills. If they know what those interest rates are, or they have a monthly payment, they can start to figure out as they build it into their budget, what they need to owe on a month by month standpoint. You can see in the bottom, I even added a Credit Karma score. Credit Karma is a free tool to track your credit score, which is as you get older, it's really important and it gives you a lot more flexibility to take on loans if you have a higher credit score. It might even make you eligible for a lower interest payment. I'm going to pause. Matt or Carolyn, what have I missed? What thoughts do you have related to these couple topics?
I would just say I use a couple specific tools I really enjoy. So on the budgeting side, if you're I use an app called Every Dollar. Both my wife and I use it. It probably gets more helpful as you have get married and have kids and all those sorts of things. But um and then on the tracking your kind of net worth and your assets and your debt, there's a tool called Empower Personal Dashboard. That also is found helpful. You can actually sync both these tools. You can sync your accounts. So, your savings account, your 401k, your brokerage account, and it'll automatically bring all those transactions in. So I do, it's all automated. And so I think that might be helpful for people who are looking for something like that. Also, spreadsheets work too. Like whatever works for you works for me. But yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on Matt's last comment. I'm still every month will go in like within the first week and go through all of our accounts and credit cards and investments. And I actually just like manually key all of that into Excel. And it takes about 30 minutes maybe every month. And I could definitely like save myself time and energy by automating it. But for me, that um, kind of just like standard process of doing it every month helps me make sure that I'm staying on top of all those different areas in a way that I know I wouldn't be as diligent in doing if it was all automated on an app. So everyone's going to have a different approach to this. And it's really whatever you know yourself best and whatever's going to work best for you in order to make it routine is going to make you successful.
And the biggest thing, thank you both for sharing, that I talk to students or individuals that want to be more focused and diligent in this space is they'll try to get too granular. Like we're seeing, on the last page where they want to track every different expense category. If that is not sustainable, the most important thing is just to know your inflow and outflow. How much are you spending on a monthly standpoint? Ideally, as Carolyn and Matt talked about, they are very diligent in tracking. And we can continue to focus in, and there's an opportunity to continually improve and just better understand our own budgeting. But we really want to set ourselves up to be successful. So just knowing yourself and what works best for you, this is all about improving our own understanding of our spending and our earning. So the next thing we talk about is really setting that plan of action, really thinking about and especially this is, I would say, as you're working in a role where you're thinking about, are there opportunities to, whether it's grow my income or to minimize, my spending. Maybe I can assess that, oh, I have too many subscriptions for different streaming services and I really want to cut those. Whatever it is, in your own lives, in your own spending, it's important that you're kind of creating a plan and then assessing yourself on that plan to see, are we making meaningful progress towards our goals? And yeah, Matt, Carolyn, if there's anything you'd add related to goal setting and building a plan of action.
I would just say, it's super important to, at some point, you're not going to want to work or you're not going to be able to physically work when you're older, right? Or maybe when you're younger. But you have to save now when you're young in order for you to be able to retire. You can't just all of a sudden, unless, you come across some, you win the lottery or something when you're older. But, it's very hard to save when you're older. So if you save when you're younger, it's much easier. If I knew the knowledge I have now at 35 when I was y'all's age, I'd probably have at least 50 to 100 grand more in my bank account. So you guys are way ahead of me just by attending this.
And small steps add up to big steps. So saving small amounts on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, whatever that looks like, adds up very quickly over time, especially if it's in the stock market or in, a high yield savings account. So don't dismiss like small dollar values. It's like, oh, it's only a little bit, it's not worth it. Like it's worth it both from a monetary standpoint and then also just like building that muscle of, hey, I'm going to be putting X amount of dollars away at each weekly, monthly cadence so that, that pot starts to grow.
Yeah, Warren Buffett always calls compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. And the fact that you all are getting started so early, I think is, a great thing just in terms of building that intentionality. I know Rylan also asked a question. What are your guys' thoughts on the Rocket Money budget app? Have either of you used that? Okay.
No, but I mean, if it's something that you like the interface of and you think you'll use it, like I think a lot of those apps have similar functionalities. So again, just something that you can build a routine around, if that works for you.
Yeah, I just keep seeing it on Reels. I'm not gonna lie, and they like say like they'll like go up to people and interview them and be like, "How many subscriptions are you actually paying for during the month?" And they'll say like 3, and it turns out to be like 13. So that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. So whatever works for you. The key is to, save money however you do it. I think there's many ways.
But exactly, Rylan, as you're talking about, the goal is that we're checking in with ourselves then. So, we set these goals, whether I want to save X amount of dollars or I want to be investing X amount into my retirement, or maybe I'm paying down loans, whatever it is, the goal is then I'm checking in to see how I'm doing. And that could be on an annual basis, every couple months, maybe it's at the end of a semester. Whatever the cadence is that works for you, it's important that we're checking in to see, like you said, did I end up signing up for 13 subscriptions and I'm not even using them and I didn't realize? Um, and so really kind of building that own tracking, and reevaluation. And Matt and Carolyn, I'd be curious what that looks like for each of you in terms of kind of how are you managing the budgeting process? Carolyn, you talked about kind of the weekly basis, what you're doing, but anything beyond that that you're both doing?
So I just sent the link to Every Dollar in the chat. So I use this app. Me and my wife actually will manually categorize every transaction. I know it sounds like a lot, but honestly, it takes me less than 5 minutes a day. And so at the beginning of every month, we go through and mutually just agree on what we want to spend for the month. A lot of it doesn't change. Maybe it's going to be, we're not paying for preschool this month or paying for a new sport, kids related stuff, or we save in advance for vacations. So we save $300 a month to spend 3 grand a year in vacations, that type of thing. So then when you go on vacation, we're not having to go into debt or anything, or move money around. We know we have that money set. So that's our kind of process. Is at the beginning of every month, me and my wife sit down and say, okay, this is our plan for month, and then every day we categorize transactions using that Every Dollar app. And so we know if we're going over budget or under budget. Um, and then, yeah, like I said, I use the personal capital tool that will this may answer. Forget who asked the original question. Is like, how do I know if I'm saving too much or too little? Um, the personal capital dashboard has a tool called a retirement planner, and I actually have a investment advisor who tells me this as well. But it'll give you the percent chance of being able to retire. So you put in all your information, how much you want to pay for kids' college, how much you want to pay for, how much you want to spend in retirement, how much do you want to pay for a wedding, or do you want to what age you want to retire, how much Social Security you're going to get, all the different things, and it'll give you a percent chance you're going to retire. So that gives me confidence knowing, I think mine's like 90% chance that I can hit my goals, right? That 90% is what gives me confidence that I'm saving the right amount. If that showed 105% or 100%, I'd be like, oh, I can spend a little bit more because I don't, that's too much. If it showed me 40%, I'd be like, whoa, I'm spending way too much. I need to save. So anyway, sorry, that was like way long-winded, but hopefully that answered your original question.
From my side, so I mentioned like every month I go through and I track all of our accounts. I have them bucketed out into like checking and savings accounts versus investments. And so I can see like where my money is going. And, it's to the point now where I'm 36, so I've been contributing to a 401k for, 15 years. Like I my 401k makes more money moving up and down with the stock market than I could ever save in any one month. I've just been diligent about contributing to that over the years. So it's really interesting to kind of see how those metrics change as you go through the different stages of your life, different stages of your career. But that's one area where I like, it just helps me to kind of right size everything and make sure I'm happy with where my money's being put. In terms of like budgeting, my husband and I bought a house a couple years ago that needs a lot of TLC, so a lot of our money goes towards DIY projects. So we will kind of sit down every 6 months or so and decide if there's a project we want to save for, and then specifically bucket towards that. So we set kind of 6 month goals on major spend, and then just track monthly against how we're doing.
Any subsequent questions that folks have? Otherwise, I want to make sure that we're jumping into talking about what does saving and investing look like. A number of students talked about, investing individually in stocks versus how do you invest broadly in the market? What does that look like? If, we're early in our career, at 19, 20 years old, any advice you might have?
So I use Fidelity for investing, and they have no like pre-trades. So it doesn't cost you anything to open an account and start playing around. So if you haven't done that, I would highly recommend just go open a Fidelity account, a JP Morgan account, any of the major brokerages, deposit $50, and then start playing around with it, because it makes it not scary. Like it can be really scary to be like, oh, I don't know about the stock market. I don't know which stocks to invest in. I'm just not going to do anything because I'm not sure I'm going to do it right. But it truly can be very like low stakes to start and to learn and to familiarize yourself. I'm a big fan of investing in ETFs, exchange traded funds, which are basically groups of stocks for a specific industry. So if I think that, um, green energy is going to do well, you can invest in a green energy stock. If you think that, um, there's ETFs that do the full, Fortune 500 companies that just basically like follow the stock market. And that's a really low risk way to also not just like stock pick and then, oh, you invest in Tesla and it, drops off the next month and you just lost 15%. ETFs are going to be much more stable and just follow the stock market more closely. So again, also like pretty low risk way to just get your feet wet with investing.
Thank you, Carolyn. And then Matt. Yeah.
I don't have anything to add to that. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
So I guess maybe the only thing I might add, Carolyn, is you mentioned play around. Uh, the majority of like my portfolio, and could ask like Carolyn or Matt as well, is going to be those ETFs that Carolyn talked about. So really trying to follow the market. I am not trying to beat the market necessarily in terms of any one, even category of a particular industry. I think as you continue to build your fluency and acumen, it is great to go after targeted industries. If you want to pick a couple individual stocks that really high on them for the long term. But from an allocation portfolio standpoint, the majority of, what I would recommend, my dollars or most people, you want to be following kind of the broader market. Any other advice that you both would share related to that?
From my side, so we put in a certain amount into the stock market each month, and most of it goes into ETFs. But I always give myself one stock pick that I think is going to be like, I'm just like keen on the company, or I read an article that, this industry is growing. And, that allows me to kind of have some fun with it while also keeping my fundamentals really solid. And I've made some horrible choices. Like I got really into Canadian pot stocks in like the early 2010s. They like shot up and then plummeted and literally are like cents on the dollar now. So that you can get screwed with that. But it was just such a small portion of my overall investments that is fine. Because I continue to just invest mostly in those pretty steady industries and ETFs.
I have
So
to ask you both, because I think we've talked about it before, but Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, I think we've talked about like 1 to 5% of the portfolio, but have you dabbled in that at all?
yeah, I've dabbled in. I have a Coinbase account, so I have a couple different crypto investments. I got in way too late, like so. Yeah, I'm not some like Bitcoin millionaire. Um, but yeah, that's like it's another again way to get your feet wet and learn. Just know that things like crypto, it's a gamble and it's not a strategy. And so you can explore it, but don't bank on that being what you retire on. So make sure that you have a mixed approach. You have fundamentals and solid investments. They're going to last the long term. And then it's okay to have a little bit of fun. Just don't make that your whole portfolio. My 2 cents.
Yeah, no, love it. Yeah, Rylan was asking about benefits of robo-advisor versus real advisor. Matt in the chat was responding. Any follow-up, Ryland, or other questions about saving and investing from the group?
No, that was good. Yeah, I mean that's all I had.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, let's kind of open it up broadly. What other questions do we have related to personal finance? Happy to talk about anything personal finance that's helpful.
I have a question. So in terms of like, we're college students, so in the future, we'll be going out looking for, some sort of housing, whether it be a house that we gain equity in or a mortgage. What kind of like, you know, percentages should we be looking for a percentage of my income for this as opposed to rent, as opposed to saving? What kind of tricks do you guys use there as in terms of how much to allocate to each section of your life per se?
Yeah, I mean, I think this it's probably pretty subjective. So for me, I think st step one should be basically like you should have enough cash to be able to have uh, survive an emergency of any case. Maybe it's a medical bill or you lose your job. So usually want to have 3 to 6 months of cash on hand, of your spending on hand. So I would not buy a house until I at least have that, and then I'd also try to get out of any consumer or high interest rate debt. Yeah, this is the baby steps that I generally follow. So pay off all your debt. Some people would argue, oh, you don't have to pay off student loans before you buy a home because they're generally low interest rate loans. So that's fine too. Um, and then in terms of how much you should buy in a home, I think like Ramsey's very conservative. I think he says not more than 25% of your after-tax income on a 15-year fixed mortgage. That basic like that really limits the number of homes you can buy. I think other like the Money Guy show and like most financial advisors are what like 30% on a 30-year fixed loan. So when you do a 15-year fixed loan, you're just paying it off faster, so your payments are higher. Your rate is lower. So it makes it harder than I have a 30-year fixed loan. Um, and it's I think 22% of our take home. Now we also have 4 kids, so like probably is better for that to be lower because we have lots of other required spending. Um, so does that make sense?
One thing that both Matt and I did in our mid 20s were we were able to buy houses and then have roommates and have roommate pay, a big portion of that mortgage. Um, so if that's I mean, something that's feasible to you, depending on where you all end up after you graduate and what type of city you're in. In many cities, especially in the Midwest, you can get homes that would make sense for. And it was huge in building equity for me to have a roommate pay half of my mortgage for what, 7 years, something like that. Because it's really fun to have roommates in your 20s. It's kind of shitty to have roommates if they're not your spouse in your 30s. And so you really have like a window of time where that fits into most people's lifestyles. So something to explore and be thoughtful about. Really nice way to build equity. And then, when you move or you sell that, you can have a nice little chunk of change. Or I rented mine out for a couple of years till I got in a nasty fight with my HOA and then had to sell it.
Carolyn, I totally thought you were going to say it's shitty to have roommates in your 30s, and I was like, what about all of our spouses?
I said exactly. I had that covered.
Yeah,
Love
you
my
covered it well. That is, Yeah, great advice. And there's a number of different programs out there for first-time home buyers that there are different grant opportunities. We had another friend that purchased his first home and essentially had $15,000 that was able to go towards his down payment. And that essentially was forgiven as long as he stayed in the house for, I forget if it was 3 to 5 years. This is Jack. That there's a number of different programs as you get to that point. I would love to also ask you both, you both know so much about personal finance. How do you continue to stay up and continue to learn? What are the sources you're using? Any social media folks you'd suggest following or learning from?
Yeah, I think it's getting better, but I love having conversations like these because it is kind of stigmatized in many circles to talk kind of openly about finances. And then people are just left in the dark. You don't learn strategies, you don't understand what your peers are doing. So I think my first recommendation is just start to have conversations with friends, family, people you're comfortable with, where you can get pretty candid and like share numbers, share what other people are doing, not just talk at high levels, because that's where I've seen the most benefit in conversations that I've had. So I think for one, like don't be scared to talk about it. Knowledge is power, like truly in this space. In terms of like accounts I follow, um, there's an account called Money with Katie, who I think she does a really nice job of breaking down um, some structural like things that people can do perfect to invest in your finance or to make smart investments. So that's one that is worth a follow from my side. I read a lot of like Wall Street Journal and New York Times stuff as well, but that's maybe less personal finance and more just keeping a pulse on what's going on in the world. Matt, I know this is probably more your domain.
I'm pretty much addicted to personal finance, social media world. Uh, uh, I'm still not on TikTok, so I don't get that level of advice. I would definitely caution against taking a random TikToker's advice and go towards people who have track records, years of experience. The Money Guy show in the bottom right there, those are two actual certified financial professional planners. They're actually based out of here in Nashville as well. Um, Definitely go with them. The Money Guy show actually does something pretty interesting where they started recently where they do like an hour to an hour and a half long conversation with like couples and they just break down their numbers and it's really interesting just to see how people manage their money, but then it'll give you like real life examples. Whereas, um, you just read the seven baby steps or the financial order of operations. It's can be maybe a little confusing because especially when you're in college, like there's probably a lot of stuff you just don't know, and seeing actual examples from people would probably be helpful.
One thing that as Matt was talking brought up something for me is probably a little bit early for you all, but as you know, think about getting into serious relationships, like getting married at some point, there's nothing that impacts your financial picture like your kind of relationship with your spouse. So thinking about being open about finances, it's really important to make sure that whoever you end up with in life, if you do, is on the same page in terms of saving and spending and debt or assets that are brought into the relationship, um, because if one half of a couple loves to spend and the other one loves to save, like it's what breaks up most relationships. So it's not super romantic, but it's a really important part of having like a successful long-term financial position as a couple, just being on the same page and talking about it.
Thank you. What other questions do we have from the students in the room? If I am in college, I'm curious what you both would be saying. What's the one or two things you'd be doing or suggesting Matt, you referenced at the beginning of the call, there's so many things that you know that you didn't necessarily take advantage of. Would just be curious, what is that advice you'd go back and give yourself?
Oh man, I would just read the Seven Baby Steps or the Financial Order of Operations and really try to understand it. And then I would, it sounds so nerdy, but trust me, it's like worth it to build the habit, is have a budget. And man, I don't know if you can quickly pull up the compound interest table, but like it's crazy how important it is to start earlier. Like I uh it matters so much when you become 30 and you want to buy a home and you want to have kids, life gets expensive. And if you didn't save when you're younger, it's difficult. And like you can see people who run into that. So it's really important to save when you're younger. Now I understand like I also like had a ton of fun in college, so like don't not have fun. Like it's okay to spend money and you don't be like just holed up in your dorm room or your apartment the whole time. But it's more about just like having the knowledge and building the system that you can bring into when you graduate college, you make some more money. So that's really my advice. And then I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, if you make a ton of money, like, that's also great. Like, imagine like LeBron James is probably not dragging every transaction in and like tracking his budgeting, but he also makes several $1 million a year. So like making money is also extremely important. So like do what you can while you're in college to develop skills that employers are willing to pay for. I would have, for example, like if your guys are interested in coding, I would have learned to code way earlier on or learned some more hard skill set in addition to like the important soft skills you learn from college because that can help you make more money too. So I don't know. I'll stop there.
Thinking back, I think there's some really powerful tools to invest in early. Like if you're, when you graduate, if your job offers a HSA, a health savings account, it's like an incredible tax-free way to grow money for inevitable healthcare expenses. And you're 22 and you're super healthy and you're like, oh, I don't need to do that. But that is just a really powerful savings device. Same thing with 401k. Just put as much money into those as early on as you can, and continue to chip away at student loans if you have them. But I'm really glad. So I think I finished paying off my student loans in my late 20s. But I did both, right? I didn't just put all of my money to my student loans and not save anything. I balanced those two, and I'm really glad that I did because the money that I've saved is worth a lot more now than what the interest I paid on the student loans. Um, so that'd be my 2 cents here.
Yeah, I appreciate both sharing advice. These are all things from previous webinars that we've done that have been brought up. And a lot of this is going to impact you, I would say, later in life and really advice to tuck away for later. But taking advantage of 401k matches, essentially that's compensation that we're leaving on the table if we don't take advantage of it. Carolyn talked about HSAs, something certainly to read up on, but it's the only triple tax advantage opportunity out there. Definitely, Matt Brown talked about keeping that percentage of how much we're paying towards our home payments, trying to keep that low relative to our income. A big unlock for me was really just learning that I'm a business in terms of how much am I bringing in and how much am I spending. And what's most important is the margin that I'm creating. And so there's two ways to increase that margin. I can spend less money or I can make more money. And the more that I started thinking about that was really helpful in terms of just understanding those different levers. We talked previously about focusing on appreciating assets like the stock market traditionally, purchasing a home versus if I'm going out and buying a new car, cars are going to depreciate over time. And so just understanding where I'm spending that money. Carolyn talked about discussing personal finances with significant others, really making a big impact. And then preventative maintenance. This is something I can share with my own life. I never got an oil change when I was in college, and then my car ended up having like a major issue. And if you do the early things, preventative maintenance in so many different contexts of life is going to save you a lot of dollars on the back end. Yeah, Matt saying way too many people want to buy a fancy car. And so many friends, to me, like a big thing I remember was as students graduated and they got that first job, maybe you got a signing bonus, they went out and spent that money on the car. And it really frustrated me because it was like, if you put that same money away, you could buy the same car in 10 years, just defer it for yourself, but you'd have a lot more savings. And so one of the mantras I've always had is I want to live, my 30s like I'm in my 20s, my 40s like I'm in my 30s. The idea that you can still have those nice things, but if you put dollars away and let that compound interest build, you're going to have a lot more flexibility on the back end.
And I'll tell you, there's nothing more comforting than peace of mind. I mean, for me personally, I'm still driving my 2014 Civic that I got basically when I moved to Seattle. And I don't really drive it much, but the feeling I get knowing how much more money I have because I've driven that the whole time, it's nice. And yeah, and so one interest, really easy way to think about it is your money doubles every 7 years if you put it in the market, essentially 7 to 10 years to minute. So it doubles every 7 years if you make 10% a year. Okay, I think it's something like that. Might be off a little bit. So just think about that. If you go, spend 30 grand on a new car, right? Or most people are going to take out a loan if they're early. It's like, well, you just lost 30 grand in 7 years, right? So think of what you could do with that. And then it keeps doubling. So then it becomes 60 grand. Then it's 120. Then it's 240. So it really snowballs. That's why if you start earlier, it's just literally like a snowball. The earlier you start the snowball, the bigger it gets first, the later.
Thank you. So Tenzin asked about what are some examples of hard skills you mentioned that are important to know?
Well, I mean, like it depends what field you're trying to go into. Like the two coding languages I learned was SQL or SQL and Python. Um, and then there's kind of frameworks around those. I won't get into that, but yeah, for me in a more technical career, it's literally like, oh, I learned there's a tool called DBT, data build tool. It's like essentially a way to execute your SQL and organize your data. Like as soon as I learned that, I got paid more. Like the company I'm at now paid me, I probably got like a 20% raise compared to where I was at previously from learning that, right? So, um, also just like Excel in the business world. Like if you're good at Excel in the business world, that's what I was out of college, and that's kind of got me into like, doing even fancier stuff with data, but like that can pay well too. Like I remember I interned at Sears and I built like a crazy cool dashboard and like I fell asleep during a meeting once in my internship. I didn't do a great job of like other things. But like I had a really good, cool Excel dashboard. They gave me an offer and like that helped me at Target too. So like, Excel's a hard skill too.
Thank you.
I have a question. At what point does the whole, personal finance tracking thing become, unhealthy or, kind of OCD is what a lot of people say when it comes to this. And, I had a friend whose dad got the receipt from every single store he went to and then would track week over week the changes in grocery prices at the different stores and then would like make a route that optimized his dollar cost average of his groceries. And if he had like a good deal on cereal, he would buy, 200 boxes of cereal so that he would like stock up for the year because he knows it's not going to get any cheaper. And that's a pretty severe example, but
It's a
at
great
what point does this like
Good
decrease the
question.
quality of your stress or well-being in your life? Where sometimes you just want to go and spend some money on a good dinner and not have to worry about it, or you're not trying to over stress about this.
It's a great question. I am definitely someone that scouts out the cheapest gas price. And then my wife will always remind me, what is my time worth if I'm saving 12 cents at the further gas station? So I definitely want to hear, yeah, what Carolyn and Matt have to say on this.
Yeah, I think the answer is it's going to be different for everyone, whether or not you enjoy it, or whether or not you see it as, just kind of like a necessary task. I think going back to a comment that Matt Brown made, you know, stressing about money sucks. It really does. It's not fun to be worried about money all the time. So having a couple month cushion saved up gives you that flexibility to go out and buy a nice meal and not have to worry that you're not going to make rent or you're not going to be able to buy groceries, or you can do that trip with your friends and it's going to be okay. Um, it might take a little bit to build that cushion, but for me, having this like peace of mind that something small isn't going to derail our financial future, like that is really reassuring and is worth a lot. So it's a balance. It's going to be different for everyone, but um, yeah, just having that cushion will make a big difference in giving you comfort to make decisions and to splurge occasionally. Because I don't think any of us are advocating like don't go out and spend any money, save it all. Like live your life and have a ton of fun. Just make it balanced.
Yeah. For me, tactically, the retirement percentage in that tool I use, Personal Capital. No, Fidelity will hire an advisor. They'll give you a percentage. You can get a percentage from anywhere, but um, that gives me, like I said, if that percentage was saying, hey, if I save 3 grand a month, and that percentage is saying, oh, like it would say like 100%, that means I'm saving too much. Like I just don't need to save that much money in order to achieve my, if I want to, for example, if I want to spend 100 grand a year in retirement, I need to have $3.5 million when I'm 65 so I can withdraw 4% of it. That's the general idea, right? Probably those numbers are probably a little tiny bit off. But the idea is like, oh, if it shows me that, oh, I'm going to end up with 6 million instead of 3.5 million, it's like, well, I don't need to say I can have some more fun right now. Now, if it showed me I'm going to end up with 500 grand and I need 3.5 million, well, then I need to start saving more, right? So that's like the math side of it. And then on the budget side, like me and my wife, because we drag every transaction, we have a little so we both have like our fun money uh uh budget line item that I don't care what she spends it on. She doesn't care what I spend it on. Just don't go over, right? And then we also just have like an extra budget line item, which is like, okay, after we pay for everything, we save for our to pay cash for cars, for a new roof, for all the different things we need to save for in the future. Uh, and that can get to be a lot. I mean, we actually have more in our like saving for to replace things and fix things than we do in our emergency fund. Um, so my point being is that we have a little extra budget that says, okay, after all that's covered, we throw a little bit in here, and we know that if we wanted to, I don't know, go do a $500 dinner, we just take it from extra because it's like on top of it. So, uh, yes, everything in moderation, including moderation. That's a great,
Yeah,
great quote.
big. I was gonna say a big saying that I always think about is just both the everything in moderation, including moderation. But what's the rule and what's the exception? If I'm going out to eat every meal, that's the rule, and that is something I don't want to be doing. On the other hand, if me going out to eat is really the exception, that's totally fine. We should be enjoying, the both life now and saving for later, and that's the balance that we're trying to strike. And I know when I was in high school and into college, I was definitely more oriented on trying to maximize my saving. And I think surrounding yourself with others that are going to nudge you to both enjoy now and save later and have kind of similar values in that standpoint of life is, going to be really helpful. Any final questions? The other thing that I'll just share briefly as we close is really giving yourself peace of mind. There's a ton of different graphics out there, um, or recommendations in terms of kind of budgeting rules of thumb. But if I know that I'm kind of keeping those essential, whether it's food, groceries, rent, transportation, all the things that I need to survive within 50%, and I'm still able to save or invest in the future, as Matt talked about, repairs, any other things in that 20%, then I have that flexibility of knowing that I can spend, in this case, we're saying 30% on those other wants and leisures. The the rec or the percentages that might change throughout life, and you can see a lot of different resources will tell you different recommendations. But the main thing is just to know, how you're tracking compared to your goals. Any closing thoughts, Carolyn or Matt, before we wrap?
I'd just say pay off debt, save money. However, there's many ways you can do it, but if you do it when you're younger, like I said, your money doubles every 7 years if you invest it just in the S&P 500. You don't have to do anything crazy, 10%, right? And that really matters. Your 30-year-old self will be really happy you made that decision now. It takes some sacrifice and some discipline to say, okay, maybe I'll cook lunch instead of going out and buying lunch. Like, you know, if you're older, if you're going out to the bars, like, oh, you could buy, the beer at the grocery store and drink with your friends. You don't have to buy it at the bar. It's more expensive, right? Obviously, you guys are freshmen, so I'm not advising that. But once you're of age, my point being is that it requires discipline and a mindset change that, Jocko Willink has a great quote, discipline equals freedom. I believe in that. If you're disciplined, you'll be happier later in life. Just makes a little bit of sacrifice in the short term is better for the long term. I will end it there for me.
I think my closing comments are, don't be scared to talk about finances. Don't be scared to keep learning. The more open you can be with people that you trust and who can be open with you, the more you're going to learn and grow. Like Matt mentioned it at the beginning, but the three of us and someone else have been in a finance club where we talk about this stuff pretty openly, and we've been doing this for years, and I have learned so much, and it's forced me to continue to upskill myself in personal finance. So it can be something that's really stigmatized, but you can make that choice to be kind of take a continuous learning approach here, and I think that's going to serve you really well. So, and you're already doing an amazing job by taking an hour to listen to us.
Oh, absolutely. Y'all are way ahead of me.
Well, thank you all for the time. I appreciate it. Have a great summer, everyone on the call. I encourage you connect with Carolyn and Matt on LinkedIn, follow up if they can be helpful. They're great resources. I've learned so much from them.
Nice to
And
meet you both.
the club that is on the chat that Carolyn is talking about, it's literally just a group of us professionals. It's not necessarily a Carlson club, but always happy to talk personal finances. All right. Thank you all. Unless there's any other questions, I'll close it from here.
See you, everyone.
Thank